What was the chief rabbi's motivation for composing the Korim Sidurim and Maksurim that have changed the landscape of Jewish prayer?
The reason that I did the Korim Siddur and now the first of the Maksurim, and I hope will complete the others, is that I felt that connecting with prayer, with tefillah, was one of the great challenges of our generation. There are too many people who come to synagogue and don't feel inspired, they don't feel they can connect with the prayers. And the first step was to try and do a fresh translation that speaks in the language of this generation, and it conveys a little bit of the power and the rhythms of the Hebrew. Then I did quite a brief commentary, but just to explain why the prayers are as they are, what is the architecture of prayer. And then I did a long introduction just to explain what actually is prayer and how do we connect to it and what difference does it make to our life. So that was the first part of a program that's been also encouraging new developments in synagogue music, and using new technologies of communication just to get people in the mood for prayer. I think too many Jews don't feel that prayer speaks to them.
We find ourselves tonight at the edge of Parsha Lech Lecha, and it's a parsha in which Avraham Avinu really begins this great venture we read about him, of putting an end to the falsehood of pagan idol worship and making the point of one God. In it, he has a meeting with Shem, with Melchizedek, right, who has clearly a different approach to maybe accomplishing some of the same things. You've used the phrase, a Judaism unafraid to engage with the world. So you've used it a few times of late, right? When I hear it, I think of Abraham, because certainly he was the prototype of this. How does this phrase, a Judaism unafraid to engage with the world, apply to our time?
I think that Avraham begins the Jewish journey by engaging with the world. We see him fight a battle on behalf of the cities of the plain. We hear him in Parshat Vayera praying for the inhabitants of the cities of the plain, even if many of them are wicked. Maybe there are 50, maybe even just 10 righteous individuals, and yet he doesn't go to live with them. He maintains his own integrity, and I try to sum that up in the phrase, be true to your faith and a blessing to others regardless of their faith. And the life of Abraham culminates when he loses his wife Sarah and has to buy a plot of land for her. And the Hittites say to him, Nasi Elokim ata b'torchenu, you are a Prince of God in our midst. If I were to sum up what is it to be a Jew, I would say it's to be God's ambassador. He wants us to represent him on earth and to make people feel uplifted by him. And Abraham was God's first ambassador, and we follow humbly in his footsteps.
It's clear that, unfortunately clear, that antisemitism is on the rise throughout the world. What is the most effective way for us to address it, to deal with it? And what is the balance for a person in a position of leadership of a community under pressure, and the balance with the call to aliyah, to multiple?
Tragically, anti-Semitism has returned to the world within living memory of the Holocaust. And it must be confronted. We must have zero tolerance for it. But in 2003, we persuaded the then head of the European Union, Monsieur Romano Prodi, to hold a European conference on anti-Semitism, the first of its kind. And I spoke on that occasion back in 2003. And this is what I said: Jews cannot fight anti-Semitism alone. The victim cannot cure the crime. The hated cannot cure the hate. I will stand up for the right of Christians anywhere in the world to live their faith without fear. But I need you Christians to stand up for the right of my people to live without fear. In Britain, I am one of the leaders of the campaign against Islamophobia, but I need you Muslims to lead the fight against Judeophobia. And I profoundly believe that. I believe that we fight anti-Semitism best by winning allies and friends, and that does mean going out and making allies and friends. As for Aliyah, some people go to Israel out of fear. I prefer to think of going to Israel out of love. Israel is the home of the Jewish heart. When you do a mitzvah in Galut, it's going against the trend, against the stream. When you do a mitzvah in Israel, it's with the stream. It belongs there. The mitzvah belongs. The landscape is a Jewish landscape. The language is a Jewish language. Every stone of Israel is soaked in Jewish history. There are around Jerusalem the hills to which David HaMelech lifted his eyes, Esayinai el Ha'arim. Judaism is at home in Israel, as it is at home nowhere else. In other places, yes, we have protected space. Our Judaism is inside the home, the school, and the shul. But in Israel, Judaism is out there in the street, in the fields, in the sky, in the air. And that is why Jews should try, in the fullness of time, to make Aliyah. And never forget Israel, so that at least, even if they don't make Aliyah, their children or grandchildren will.
What is the importance and the function of kiruv in today's environment?
The idea of kiruv Hakeem, of reaching out to estranged Jews or disaffiliated Jews, is one of the most beautiful phenomena of our time, which we owe so much to the Lubavitcher Rabbi who instituted it and the other groups who followed it. And I do a little mathematical sum. Supposing I have $1,000 and I share it with 9 other people. At the end I'm left with 1/10 of what I began with. Supposing I have total power and I decide to share that power with 9 other people, I'm left with 1/10 of the power that I had before. But think of influence, or love, or trust, or even knowledge. If I share that with 9 others, do I have less? I have at least as much as I had before, and quite probably more. So there are very special things called spiritual goods, which the more you share them with others, the more you have. And that is what kiruv is all about. You love your Judaism so much you want to share it with others. And the end result is you have more than had you kept it to yourself. So kiruv is the tzaf hasha'ah, the command of our time. We are losing too many Jews, and we're losing too many Jews, partly because they don't know enough about the beauty of Judaism, but partly also because no one reached out a hand to them. And everyone who can reach out a hand to another Jew will find that lifting others, they themselves are lifted.
What is the function of new technology and communication in the growth of Orthodox Judaism today and tomorrow? How do you perceive it?
We are in the midst of one of the great revolutions in human history. The great revolutions happen when there is a change in which in the way in which we record and transmit information. Other technological changes have localized impact. But when there's a change in information technology, it changes everything. There have been 3 such changes in history. One was the invention of writing in Mesopotamia before the days of Avram Avinu, some 4,500 years ago, followed by hieroglyphics in Egypt, ideograms in China, the Indus Valley script, and so on. The second great revolution was the invention of the alphabet. The first alphabet was Hebrew. The first alphabet is technically called Proto-Semitic, and the first form of it was discovered in the Sinai Desert by a British anthropologist and archaeologist called Flinders Petrie in 1903. All alphabets in the world are direct or indirect descendants of that original Hebrew script. And you can see that from the word alphabet, which is Aleph Bet. The third revolution was the invention of printing, which took place in Europe through Johannes Gutenberg in Germany in the 15th century, mid-15th century. And we are living through the fourth great revolution, instantaneous global communication. Judaism was therefore born in a revolution in information technology. You see, even the simplest pre-alphabetical script, the slimmed down demotic hieroglyphics, even for that simplest system, you had to learn 450 different characters. So it's obvious that not everyone will be able to read or write. Along comes the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, and reduces the whole of knowledge to 22 symbols. So for the first time in history, you can think of the possibility of a society of universal literacy. And that's what the Navi Yeshayahu means when he says, V'chol banayech l'medei Hashem, v'rav shalom banayech. Unheard of. All your children will be learned of God. They will all be able to read and write. So Judaism was born in that incredible revolution in information technology that spread knowledge potentially to everyone. Now comes instantaneous global communication, the web, the internet, smartphones, the entire Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. All of this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu hitting us on the head and saying, use all of this technology to spread my word to the world. So everything that uses the new technology is really responding to Kol Dodi Dofek, the voice of my beloved knocking at the door. God is knocking at our door saying, make sure there is no Jew in the world, no person in the world who is unable to access my word. So I congratulate you and all who use this new technology. It is one of the great moments in history.
Is there a specific responsibility that the group of websites, the ever-growing group of websites that are dedicated to, we'll call them kosher, I don't mean in the sense of food, but in the sense of content, that they have a specific responsibility or role within the internet that they should have an awareness of?
Those Torah institutions that use the internet, I think must be careful to, first of all, tell the truth as it is with integrity. I think quality matters. I think that there's much good and much that is not good on the internet. And I think we have to continue to explore ways, using the internet, of creating moments, either of intellectual breakthrough, this is what the Torah wants of us now, or of spiritual power. So it can use music and images, and I think we're just at the beginning of something.
What is the task and the challenge of the next generation?
It is very interesting that we read the words God said to Avram, Lech lecha me'artzecha me'moladetecha u'mibeis avicha. Leave your land, your birthplace, and your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you. And it is as if Avram came from nowhere. Out of the blue came this call. But if you look at the previous chapter, you will see his father Terach already began the journey. And whether we think of our parents or we think of Hashem, of God, the Jewish command is Hitalech lefanai, go on ahead of me. My late father, Oliver Shalom, used to say to me, Jonathan, I never had a Jewish education, but I would like you to have the Jewish education I never had, and then whatever you learn, you will teach me. So the challenge to the next generation is always continue our journey and go beyond. And our young people will recognize the precise direction that Hashem wants them to go in a way that we can't. Because every generation, dor v'dor shav, every generation has its particular search and its particular challenge. And that's why we have children and grandchildren who see the things that we cannot see and who will travel beyond what we are destined to travel.
What will the term of UK's Chief Rabbi, Jonathan Sachs, be most noted for? You're entering your third decade, I think, in this position.
On the day I was installed as Chief Rabbi, I said, I hope I can be a catalyst for creativity. You know, some rabbis think it's for me to do it all. And I know perfectly well that the greatest thing any Rav can do is encourage leadership in others. So as I look back over 20 years, I see first that we have doubled the percentage of young Jews going to Jewish day schools, from 30% to well over 60%, by now almost 70%. We have had a cultural renaissance in Anglo-Jewry, so that Anglo-Jewry today has certain institutions of adult education and culture that it never had before. And thirdly, I think, and I tried here to lead from the front because I've done a lot of broadcasting and talking to the general public, Jews feel less embarrassed to identify themselves as Jews in public. You know, Jews in Britain tended to be a little bit incognito, low profile. And I think now Jews are proud to be Jews, so our great law firms have sukkahs on Sukkot, and they have shirim in the middle of the day. And I think people are less embarrassed to be Jewish. And all of this has been a collective achievement of the entire community. And it was just a pleasure and a privilege to be one of the team.